upcoming budget for the next fiscal year, May 14th.
This meeting is being recorded.
2020. Okay, so we call this meeting to order. Let's do a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Warren?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Simmons? Commissioner Simmons? I do see her present in the video.
She's muted. There it goes. There we go.
Ward? Ariola? And Hayes Santos?
Here.
And Mayor Poe?
And I too am here in both the physical and metaphysical sense. Next, we have adoption of our agenda. Anybody like to make the motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved, Adrian.
Okay, moved by Santos, seconded by Ward. Any members of the public wish to speak to the adoption of the agenda? No? Okay, thank you, Larry. Move to a roll call vote.
Johnson?
Aye.
Simmons?
Aye.
Ward?
Aye.
Ariola? Hayes Santos?
Aye.
Mayor Poe? Oh, I'm sorry,
motion-
Warren?
Nope.
Aye.
And Mayor Poe?
Aye, that motion passes 6-0 with Ariola absent. Okay, Madam Clerk, our next item, please.
Our first item is 191200, General Government Budget Planning Meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to our city manager, Lee Feldman, as well as all of the folks that have been working for quite some time, but especially over the last 2 months in China. First peek at next year's budget ready for us. I will say in advance, and probably will be reiterated many times throughout this conversation, what we know now might change significantly, after a couple more weeks or a month once we learn more information. So, I think for us, if we can understand the sort of baseline from which we're starting to work, and also try to give some as clear a direction as we can to staff of what we're willing or not willing to do, so they can work that into their plans as they move forward. So with that, I will turn it over to our city manager for some comments, and we'll let you take it away from here. Mr. Feldman, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the commission. So as the mayor stated, probably a little bit more eloquently than I can, these numbers are all going to change. So let me just preface a couple of variables. We have not gotten our property tax valuations in. Those come in June 1st. So we are 16 days away from getting those numbers. Our state revenues, which are determined by the Florida Department of Revenue, they have a bureau in there that publishes these numbers. They're all predicated upon the governor signing a budget, and we usually get those mid-June, early July. As you know, the governor has not signed the budget yet, so those may even be more delayed. So a couple of the revenue sources, and we'll be talking about this in a minute, is sales tax. We know that there's been a hit on our economic activity. We are using the recession as an initial benchmark for that, but we have not yet gotten sales tax receipt numbers in. We should be getting March's numbers in any day now, and then April's numbers in June. So we'll have a much more realistic look at those numbers come June, mid-June. Same thing with revenue sharing numbers, which are sales tax based, and local option gas tax numbers, which are based upon the number of gallons that are sold within the county and then distributed back to us on there. So the bottom line is we have a lot of unknowns. So the work that Diane and Karen have done over the last month working with departments is all subject to rapid change. So don't get lost in the numbers today. We want you to talk more about concepts and make sure we're on the same page as things that you want to see us address within the coming budget. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Karen and let her walk you through the power performance.
All right, Ms. Fiore, welcome.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay. I'm going to share my screen. Again, Karen Fiore, Budget Manager. So we have a few items to review with you this afternoon. As Lee just mentioned, reviewing our uncertainties that we're facing in our general fund. We'd like to review what's already in the FY21 approved plan. This is the second year of the 2-year budget, so you've already approved our fiscal year 21 plan. Review the general fund baseline adjustments that we've had to make to the plan. Again, these recommended city manager increments, as noted earlier, will probably change, but we do have some that we would like to move forward with. Review possible budgetary levers to balance the budget. We would like to have a discussion around a possible revision to the general fund balance policy and to relook at our emergency reserve fund policy.
Thank you. And Ms. Fiore, before you get too much into it, for all the members of the commission, I will be keeping an eye on the participant list for hands. It is generally my preference that we try to get through as much of the presentation as possible. And so if you can jot down your questions, there is a natural stopping point about 2/3 the way through here, where we get through the general fund stuff and then we get into some other things. And so if we can, hold your general fund budget questions, whether it's from the expenditure or the revenue side, we'll pause there and then go back and answer this. Now, if there's something you just don't understand or need clarification on, please raise your hand virtually, raise your hand, and I will pause to make sure that you get whatever confusion cleared up before we go on too much. If that sounds good to everybody, Ms. Fiore, please continue.
Thank you. So the uncertainties, as Mr. Feldman noted, it's still early in the budget process. We're waiting for that June 1st number, which can totally change the numbers that you're going to see in a short while. It may increase our revenue, but it may also have a negative effect due to the COVID-19 issue we're going through today. So the Florida Department of Revenue will come out in June and July with new estimates. And we don't have the commission increments as well in this documentation. With pension contribution, the Department of Retirement isn't accepting our numbers, and therefore we may end up having to contribute more out of the general fund. So what's already in our approved plan? So the revenues in our approved plan was $134 million, and the expenditures about the same, which we had a small surplus of $722,000. If you recall, fiscal year 20, we did use $455,000 from fund balance to balance the budget. Fiscal year 21 plan does not have any use of fund balance. The plan already includes for the revenue fire assessment at 50% of the cost of fire protection, which is $133 per factor fire protection unit. The general fund transfer agreed upon with GRU. We've kept this at fiscal year 19 transfer, which is $38.2 million. We proposed a new borrowing for fiscal year 21 in the amount of $4.3 million, and that was for Fire Station 9 and the Southwest Public Safety Annex study. And the expenditures already include living wage increases and compression for the community builders. So we're going from 13.75 to 14.25 minimum wage for $298,000. Again, that's in our fiscal year 21 plan already. We'll continue total rewards. $600,000 is in the plan for 21. We included raises at 2%, which is a little over $1 million. And then again, the proposed new debt issuance on the expenditure side, we would have interest and principal payments of $331,000. Again, this is included in the fiscal year 21 baseline. But then there's going to be adjustments that we had to make to that baseline. We didn't have to, but we increased our revenue based on our new projections by $4.9 million, and we increased our expenditures $5.9 million, which now has us at a deficit of $278,000. So the revenue adjustments for the property tax, we based it on fiscal year 20 taxable value, and we grew that at 5.1%, and that was based on the ad valorem estimating conference. So that gave us about $1.1 million additional revenue. Again, we're still waiting on that June 1st number. The local option gas tax, we revised our assumptions to fiscal year 19 actuals, which gave us an additional $84,000. Our hazmat gross receipts, our assumption, we went to the 5-year average, which gave us an additional $129,000. Communication service tax, our projections are at fiscal year 19's actual, and then we reduced it by 0.89% based on the state of Florida revenue estimating conference. This was a reduction in revenue by $26,000. Our business tax, we put this projection at fiscal year 19 actuals, which gave us $115,000. The fire assessment is still at the 50% of the allowable building, which is currently $133 per factor fire protection unit, which gave us an additional $362,000. So the fiscal year 21 approved plan, we were pretty conservative on the fire assessment, but I will let you know that collection for fiscal year 20 was good. We were right at budget, so I felt comfortable increasing this budget line a little bit more here. So we were very conservative on our original fiscal year 21 plan. State revenue sharing, sales tax, and motor fuel. We changed our projection to the 5-year average, and then we reduced it by 7%, which actually was still an increase of $620,000. And again, as Mr. Feldman mentioned, the 7% came from what we saw during our last recession here with the city. Half-cent sales tax, the state of Florida projection, and then again, we reduced it by that 7%, which was a decrease of $232,000. Fiscal year 20, we did a new cost allocation plan, and our indirect service total increase for the general fund was $980,000. And for fines and forfeitures, we projected at fiscal year 19's actuals, which is actually a reduction of $109,000. So overall, total revenue adjustment.
Thank you, Ms. Doria. We do have a question from Commissioner Simmons.
Okay.
Mayor, thank you. I'm on my tablet, all I see is the interpreter, and I'm having a very difficult time following Diane. It may be showing for the folks at home, but I'm not even seeing the presentation from my view on my tablet.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you help Commissioner Simmons through that? I'm seeing it on mine, so I know that it has been shared. And so maybe, Madam Clerk, if you could call Commissioner Simmons on her cell phone and figure out how to get
Yes.
that solved, and we'll pause briefly while you get that.
Thank
I'll
you.
have someone reach out to her.
Thank you. It's hard to read on the screen anyway, some of these slides, because it gets covered up by the video image and as well as the participant list for me anyway. So I've got it up separately on my iPad, but I know that not everybody can do that. While this is happening, Mr. Feldman, I just have to admit, like, it would seem to me that one thing that's going to be significantly lower than we're even projecting is gas tax. I mean, I hate to base any decisions on anecdote, but I haven't put gas in my car since the middle of March.
Yeah, so we think gas tax is going to be lower. You know, we operate under a formula that was negotiated with the county.
Oh, I'm familiar.
On there, you know, candidly, most counties keep a larger portion of the gas tax because they run transit and they move that money into the transit operation, and then cities generally use it for fixing roads. Here, you know, we run the transit system, and so our share is not only for helping us with RTS, but it's also for maintaining our roads. So, you know, we're anticipating that local option gas tax number will be smaller. We just don't know how much smaller at this point. And, you know, I anticipate that it will have a hit on our road paving efforts.
Okay.
I don't think we can get out of RTS.
Right. Commissioner Simmons, just let us know when you get that sorted out, and we'll move forward. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's take a 5-minute recess while that gets sorted out. So I have nothing that tells me what time it is. 1:18, let's come back.
Mayor,
Yeah.
this is Kristen Bryant. Commissioner Simmons asked to just go on ahead. So not.
Oh, okay. Okay. If Commissioner Simmons, if you can hear me, if you need to pause or get any clarification, just chime in, just unmute yourself and chime in, and we'll try to get your question answered. But with that, Ms. Fiore, let's go ahead and go, I guess, to the next slide, slide 12.
Thank you. On the expenditure side, some baseline adjustments that we made for salary and benefits. We already had 2% merit increases in the baseline, but it was agreed upon that to stay relevant with the market, we need to increase the merit by 2.5% each year, as well as the total reward impact from fiscal year 20 and salary adjustments due to new union contracts. And we also have an $879,000 transfer to RTS to cover their 2.5% increase and their total rewards. So this was an additional $3.5 million in salary expenditures added to the baseline. We increased our variable and fixed for fleet up to 5%, which was an additional $104,000. Our new ERP system with Workday, the differential expenditure between our legacy program and the new ERP, as well as 6 additional months with our legacy due to the change in our go live date. So we're going to keep using our existing ERP system for an additional 6 months. So that will be additional $582,000 total. And then there were new reoccurring expenses approved in fiscal year 20, such as the GRACE contract, security guard at the City Hall, as well as out at the one-stop station. We've taken on GTech facility expenditures, as well as wild spaces, public places transition to the general fund. Some of those parks that are transitioning are Fred Cone, Oakview, JJ Finley, and Reserve Park, to name a few. So that was an additional 1.2 million in recurrent expenditures added to the baseline for a total of $5.9 million in additional expenditures. So the general fund increments. Again, I can't stress enough that Lee has not had the opportunity to vet every single increment with his departments yet. We're doing that on Monday. So this list that you're going to see will probably change. So with the changes to our baseline, we were at a deficit of $278,000. And the proposed increment so far, we have at 1.2 million, which would actually get us to a deficit of $1.5 million. It's important to note, to fully fund, we require the use of fund balance or expenditure reductions, but the city manager does not recommend the use of fund balance. So overall, to look at the 1.2 million in increments, one-time general fund expenditures recommendation is 442,000. Recurring general fund increments of 392,000, which includes an FTE. That 0.28 FTE is due to the fact that the city auditor deleted one of her positions that was funded in the general fund 0.72%. So we're recommending adding one FTE and subtracting 0.72 FTE for a net of 0.28. And then we have some one-time capital expenditures for $455,000. This $455,000 would have to be general fund funded. There is currently no additional capital available budget. So again, $1.2 million in recommended increments with an additional FTE. The city manager's proposed preliminary budget here includes other charters. So here you see that the clerk is requesting one-time $100,000 for a digital conversion of our historical city files, as well as $15,000 for recurring increased administrative expenses. The auditor is requesting $7,000 for operating expenses for her IT audit manager that was added in fiscal year 20. And the attorney, like mentioned earlier, is deleting a legal assistant 2 position, which was funded 0.72% in the general fund, freeing up a recurring $40,000 in the general fund. So other charters total of $81,000 is included in the city manager's budget. Looking at the city manager's department increments, $9,500 for one-time expenditures for office equipment for the 4th floor at City Hall. Strategic initiatives moved out of City Hall's 4th floor, vacating a few offices that are now required to be furnished. Strategic initiatives, $50,000 for a climate change dashboard. This was due to the commission resolution declaring climate change. So this would pay for a consultant to help with our data to figure out what our carbon footprint is. Housing community development, recurring $10,000 for operating expenses for the housing action plan. You may recall in fiscal year 19, 2 FTEs were added for this initiative, but no operating expenses came with that increment. So this will be the operating expenses for those 2 additional FTEs. Sustainable development, which is the working title for our planning department. One-time $203,000 for dangerous building demolition. This $203,000 will allow them to demolish around 39 structures. Budget and finance, an additional 1 FTE for a senior accountant for recurring $87,000. So both the internal and external auditors have recommended that based on the size of the city, we are short-staffed in the accounting department. So the request was for 2, but we're only recommending to move forward 1. And that position would also have a one-time expenditures of $4,000 for setup fees, such as a computer and desk. Transportation and mobility, one-time $50,000 for a parking pay station. This would be equipment upgrades. Police department, a recurring $30,000 for their internal affairs lease expense. This also includes parking at Wells Fargo building. $15,000 for Parks and Rec for Peaceful Sundays, I'm sorry. This is a recurring event that requires police presence, so this $15,000 would cover that. Parks and Rec, another $88,000 for reoccurring expenditures associated with building rental, visitor centers, and utilities. Ironwood moved into the general fund starting in fiscal year 20, and they did not receive $145,000 for their recurring temp force. That's what this $145,000 is. Communications needs to update their editing software and equipment and some computers for a one-time cost of $26,000. And then $35,000 for recurring telephone town hall meetings. So the idea here is to allow each commission to have one town hall meeting per year. On the capital side, sustainable development is asking for $75,000 for the notification tool development. In fiscal year 20, they were given $50,000 to begin the development of this web-based application. However, the wiring, framing, and the initial development has already exceeded the $50,000. So this $75,000 would allow the module to be up and running. Parks and Rec is asking for $65,000 one time for the MLK bleachers. This is to replace the bleachers in the gym. Parks and Rec is requesting $275,000 to replace the West Side Pool PVC liner. Fiscal year 20, they received an increment to replace the nickel pool liner. And then our historic Thomas Center building, the Spanish court glass ceiling needs to be reglazed for a one-time cost of $40,000. So it's total all increments at $1,290,000. So some possible budgetary levers to balance the budget. We can increase the millage rate. We can increase the fire assessment greater than the 50% of the cost of fire protection. On the expenditure side, some levers. We can say no to all the increments. We could suggest the use of fund balance. We could suggest program cuts. And then we can also take a look at our chargebacks to departments, such as what we contribute into our fleet fund and our risk fund. Looking at the history of Gainesville's millage rate, you can see we were pretty flat up through 2017, and then in 2018 we had a increase of 0.2395 mils, so we went to 4.7474 mils in 18. We kept that same amount for 2019, and then last year for 2020 we increased 0.55 mils, so we're currently at 5.2974. Compared to other cities across Florida, you can see Gainesville there at 5.2974 in the lighter color. You can still see that we're not the highest rate in the city, in the state. To see what an increase to the millage may look like, a scenario possibly 0.25 mil increase would generate about $1.8 million more in revenue for the city. and would be an additional $39 to the taxpayer based on $150,000 taxable value after the $50,000 homestead exemption. Another example, increasing 0.5 mils would be about 3.6 million additional revenue to the city and would be an additional $77 to the taxpayer. Our fire assessment fee, the purpose is to calculate it to cover 50% of the cost of the fire protection. Currently, it is at $133 per factor fire protection unit, and that's based on an average size of 2,000 square feet is 1.5 SPU. And this is roughly about 8.4 million annually in revenue to the general fund. The history of the fire assessment, when we began the fire assessment in 2011, the factor of protection unit was at $78, and at that time, that was to cover 50% of the cost. This chart shows you that we kept that $78 all the way through fiscal year 17. And at that point in time, $78 was only covering approximately 42%. So then in 18, we increased to 101. We kept that same rate for 19. And then last year, we increased to $133 to get back to the 50%. So looking at the fire assessment without total rewards and merit increases. So as your fire department's budget grows, that 50% is not relevant. So currently at 133, without our total rewards and merit increases, you can see we're at 8.4 million in revenue and $199 to the taxpayer. But if you were to add in our total rewards and merit increases, you can see that that 50% actually shifts up. So it would be 159 approximately fire factor protection unit, which would be additional $39 to the taxpayer. I have to note here though, we're still waiting for the June 1st numbers, and based on Jeff, who is our consultant for Government Service Group, he provided me with some preliminary numbers, and his numbers are actually lower. So I don't want you to get stuck on these actual numbers here, but just to note that 50% is no longer the 133. And when we meet again, we'll give you better numbers after June 1st. To look at what an increase in millage and an increase to the fire assessment would look like, if we increase 0.25 mils and increase the fire assessment to potentially a new 50% mark, it would be $39 for the millage rate increase for the taxpayer and 1.8 million increase revenue to the city. And the fire assessment would be an additional $26 for the taxpayer, which would be about 800,000 additional revenue for the city. So total there on the bottom there, you can see the taxpayer, it would increase $65 for both of those per year with an additional $2.6 million in revenue to the city. And I won't read through all of these different scenarios. The last one there, if you increase 0.75 mils and you set your fire assessment to 75, you can see that it will be additional $155 to the taxpayer and additional 10.8 million to the city. Again, these numbers will change based on our June 1st numbers.
Okay, so Ms. Fiore, let's pause there before you get into the insurance fund, because that's really, I think, a good place to answer some questions if anybody has them, or get some thoughts. Again, this is very difficult because it's one of those things that the minute we publish these numbers, we know they're wrong, because they're going to start changing very quickly. So I certainly have some questions, some clarifications I'd like, and maybe a suggestion or two, but I'll make sure we get the rest of the commission first. So up first, we have Commissioner Warren.
Thank you. Karen, I really appreciate the graphs that you've provided, especially with that historical perspective of the property taxes and how we compare with other cities. So one of the things, you know, when we show the chart of the trend in the property taxes, I think I had that on page 26, no, 25. I'd like to try to keep that about where it is. But when I saw the amount that we had with the merit total rewards with $3.5 million in that increment, and wondering, I think everybody realizes that, you know, cities are going to have to be cutting somewhere. And I would wonder what it would look like if we didn't do the full 2.5% merit increase. Because the one thing I don't want to see is that we have to drop off any staff. But if there was a 3.5 million that would go with a 2.5% merit, if we reduce that to 2 or 1.5% for this year, and then some of the things that were charter officer increments, even there, I'm not seeing that a lot adds up from all the different departments. Maybe less than 2 million that I saw across those pages 20 through 23. That would be the one area that I would wonder, what would it look like if we reduce the 2.5% merit and tried to see if we could keep. There's two things I'd like to see: that we don't raise our I'm going to turn the phone off every time somebody calls in. I don't want to see us, if we can keep our GRU rates, I feel like that impacts so many people that are in the lower income. Try to keep the property taxes kind of level. I think, you know, we did such a big jump between 2019 and 2020. And so much of that was catching up with the total rewards, you know, and the resolution with the unions. We got everybody together in an agreement. But so that would be my main thing. If we looked at the merit rewards at a lower number than 2.5%, and with a goal of trying to keep energy GRU rates low and not having to raise them a lot. Some feedback on that would be appreciated. And I don't expect you to have that today. That would be a projected request for the future and maybe coming back next time, unless you're able to do something today.
So Commissioner, let me just chime in. We shouldn't really get wrapped around the numbers at this point until we get more concrete data in terms of our shared revenues and what the property tax numbers are. Because, right, I mean, we could be in a position where our numbers drop dramatically and we have to make some really tough choices, or we can be in a position where we see a negligible.
Well, I recognize in a month you're going to have a whole bunch of new information to add.
Right.
But this is pretty much the last meeting I'll have on this side of the Zoom to just express some of the concerns that I've got overall to share with the other commissioners, that to maybe think about, you know, not pushing. We're going to have to push the envelope somewhere, I think. So this is just my 2 cents. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 questions. One, page 22, we looked at the PRCA. Is it any possibility any of those funds can come from public places money?
Mr. Feldman?
Yes, so Karen, if we can just flip back to page 22. The short answer is we had more PRCA items in there, and what I felt was eligible for wild spaces, public places, we took took it and put it there.
So this is wild space. This is considered wild spaces.
No, these 3 items are not, but there were several other items that were.
Okay. And I have another question, City Manager. You were not here last time, but we had a conversation about the communication sales tax. And I know in other cities, they were having difficulty collecting those taxes early on, but they were using some aggressive tactics, or not too aggressive, but just really going to those carriers and trying to get the funding. What have you all done, or what have you considered doing in collecting those communication sales tax?
So we just recently did an overlay of all the addresses that are in the Department of Revenue database for the cities, make sure that there weren't any gaps that achieved. But it's, so I think our database is up to date, at least based upon what we've visually been able to see. Communication service tax has always been a difficult one because a lot of the information is confidential. And all we can do is stress to folks that their billing addresses should be changed, but even that doesn't guarantee that the tax will be correct. So, for example, in my own particular case, I've been fighting with my individual carrier, who will go nameless, on there, but I still have one of my phone numbers where Palm Bay is getting the CST on it, because the carrier will not change their database, even though my billing address has changed to Gainesville. So that's a struggle. The other part is, who pays the bill, right? So we have a large percentage of students here. And if their parents are paying the bill in Orlando, on there, that's where the CST is being collected. If the student is paying it here in Gainesville, we're using a Gainesville address, we probably have a better chance of gathering it. But CST has been a real problem for all cities to get an accurate reporting on.
So are we going to, are we, I know it's difficult, Mr. Manager. Has there been any federal talk or legislative talk about collecting these revenues? Or do we know anything that's in the pipeline regarding CSTs?
So the only thing that's been, so this is a state tax on there. It's the simplified sales tax that went into effect in October of, I think, 2003 on there, because everybody had different rates and companies couldn't keep up. But the latest discussions in Tallahassee among the legislature has not been to make it easier, but actually just to cut the rate. And we narrowly escaped that this legislative session, because the up until the very last minute, there was a reduction in the CST for cities. And it didn't make it into the final tax bill. But every year, this is a subject. Either they make more exemptions, they bundle money, and internet providers get a benefit. But this one has been a struggle for cities to just maintain.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Are you, Mr. Manager, are you saying the telecommunications lobby is stronger than the local government lobby in Tallahassee and Washington?
Well, I'll tell you,
answer that.
Some of the telecommunication industry is actually legislators. So,
right. Yeah, it's a really valuable question. I'm glad you're keeping on top of that, Commissioner Simmons, because it's it is a significant lost source of revenue, to be sure, especially with our student population. Madam Clerk, can you please, I think it's you that does this, that once somebody has spoken, remove the raised hand and cycle through the next person. But I believe next we have Commissioner Hey Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And when I was in Tallahassee earlier this year, we were lobbying to try to keep that tax from being lowered. So I think what the biggest thing that we need to do is go up to Tallahassee during legislative session and lobby the people who are on the committees. That's really, they're going to push forward every year. I do have a question on what was currently in our baseline budget. And I guess this actually goes back to last year. I'm trying to remember, we put some money aside for the implementation of the rental housing ordinance, I believe, into last year's budget. I'm trying to remember if we had an FTE in that or their dollar amount, and is that carrying over to the current budget baseline?
That was a one-time increment for $150,000, and it did not include an FTE.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that $150,000 is still there then, correct?
I can check to see if that's been expended yet.
I don't think it has, but okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, City Manager, about the pension contribution and the state not accepting our numbers. Do we have like a preliminary numbers about what we might be seeing that would need to come out of general fund balance for that, if they're not accepting our numbers right now?
I can get you that number. It would need to be split between the general government fund balance and GRU.
Okay.
I think last time I saw the number, it was a low 7-figure number.
Okay, so it's not in the millions. Okay.
No, it's just about $1 million.
Just about $1 million.
But
Okay.
then that would be split between the entities.
Okay. You said between GRU and general
General-
government. Okay.
Right, and also, the enterprise funds that we have and internal service funds. So not all of it would be a hit on the general fund balance.
Okay. And do we have an estimation of what our vacancy savings are going to be this year?
We do. I don't recall it offhand. Karen might know.
Ms. Fiore, do you have that at the ready?
Yes, the last time we looked, it was around a little over $3 million currently.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, where is Strategic Initiatives moving to?
The old library building.
Okay.
There's some space over there so they can all be together.
Okay. And the dangerous building demolition structures, I know that there was a priority list that we had. I forget what it was, maybe 1 to 3 or 1 to 6. Do you remember what it was? Was it 1?
1 to 5, with
1 to
5 being,
okay.
5 being the highest.
Okay. And then what, how many structures offhand, does that include everything in the 1 to 5 range, or does that include a portion?
That included everything that has been cited with an order to demolish.
Okay, so that would mean that we are basically looking at like the ones, the most.
No, 5s are the most serious, and we're looking at those first.
Okay, so the 39 structures are all in the 5 range.
No, I think some of them are in the 4 range.
Okay.
As well, maybe hitting the 3s.
Okay.
I'd have to go back to the list and look.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about Ironwood Temp Force and that that expenditure? Why are we using Temp Force out there and not hiring our own people?
I'll defer that to Karen. She's got a little bit more history on that.
Okay.
But I think it's just the turnover for those types of positions.
Okay.
That's correct. So, for example, the beverage carts that travel around the course, those are not typical full-time positions that you would hire. They're more temporary, seasonal positions. So they have a heavy use of temp force for items like that.
Okay. So is our HR department not able to do some of that work with hiring temporary workers for Ironwood?
Karen, this is Diane. I was going to jump in real quick if you don't mind. One of the issues that they have at Ironwood is their bartenders, for example. If one of them quits, we need to have somebody available to step in the very next day, or we won't be able to run that function. And if we run through HR, we have to go through a hiring process. So that is what makes that area unique compared to the others. Typically, we would run a process, but because you need somebody the very next day, temp force has been a really good solution for that problem. There are other positions at Ironwood that are, regular city employees that work in the office and such, but that particular area tends to be challenging.
I see.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does help. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely.
And so the MLK bleachers and is it called the liner at Westside, at Westwood Pool? How is that something that absolutely needs to be done this upcoming year, or can that wait? Like, would we still be able to use the facilities in the pool if we decided not to spend money on that this upcoming year?
So these capital increments are what I'm planning on reviewing the coming weeks with the departments to get those very answers.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all of my questions for now. Where I am, I'm interested in, everything is going to change in a couple of weeks. So I'm interested to see what the new numbers are. At this point, because of where we are with the economy, I'm not going to be in favor of raising taxes right now. So that is where I stand at this point. It could change, but that's where I am with that. And also just keeping I know that we haven't gotten to the GRU budget yet. And I know that's going to make a difference with the transfer, the general fund transfer, but I'm also interested, and I've already kind of expressed this to Ed, that raising GRU rates is not something that I would be in favor of doing right now, considering the economy.
Do you conclude?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get Commissioner Ward before I go back and give folks a second chance to speak. So Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. First of all, thank you to everyone who put this together. Ms. Fiore, Ms. Wilson, manager's office. Thank you for bringing all this forward for us. I look forward to June 1st to having the actual information, but also to seeing what your recommendations are, Mr. Manager, after you go through the increments. There's a lot more discussion to be had, but it's hard to have those discussions, as everyone said, with that actual information in front of us that we'll have in June. So we have plenty of time to get this done. I'm curious, because I don't remember off the top of my head, can someone tell us about what the percentage of sales tax contributes to our revenue? Just a percentage. I don't need the revenue number, but the percentage.
Ms. Fiore or Ms. Wilson, you probably best would be able to answer that.
Yes, I just have to get my calculator out real quick.
You don't like travel with that in your hand?
No.
You remember the rules about not doing math with the lectern, right?
Right. And this is not for any decision purposes. We can always, it's just helpful to have that placeholder as if it changes drastically, we still know the percentage that we've been counting on doesn't change all that much.
I have an orange also.
Mr. Johnson, you're not on mute.
Sorry.
Okay. And while I'm on though, I'm not in a rush, by the way, to raise the millage rate. That's not a conversation we need to have at this point, I don't think. But I did pop over to the property appraiser's website, where there's a list of all the municipalities in Alachua County and their millage rates. And I would recommend that everyone do that, where you will see that Gainesville still has a relatively low millage rate in comparison to the other municipalities in Alachua County. I strongly recommend everybody go take a look at that. That's one of those things that everybody knows, that Gainesville is the highest millage rate in the county, except it isn't actually true. So I would strongly recommend people go take a look at that. And just when you get a chance, if you would update us on that percentage of the total revenue that comes from sales tax.
It's 6%.
6% of the total budget.
Yes, or half of sales tax.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Warren, you had your hand up earlier. Did you rescind your hand, or did it get turned off for you? Commissioner Warren?
Still was muted. Yeah, Gail, Commissioner Johnson asked a question about what improvements could be held off to another year, such as the pool cover. I'm good.
Okay, great. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Commissioner Ward's point, I think it'd be good to add that other municipalities in Alachua County's millage rate to the slides too on our next one, just so we can kind of see it. The GFT, the general fund transfer, is that currently the baseline budget is being kept flat? Is that correct? There's no increase?
We're not asking for an increase.
Okay, so it's currently at zero or no change at all. Okay. And I guess one request, I don't know if you can do this now or later, but what is the cost of the merit raises, of the 2.5% merit raises by themselves, not including the total rewards and all of that? And you can get that to me later if that's not something I'll have on hand.
Yeah, that may take some time, because I calculated it based on the salaries after the total reward implementation. So I would have to backtrack. The additional 0.5% merit was another $1.2 million on the already little over $1 million we had in the baseline.
Total rewards?
Yeah, so the total rewards that's in the baseline is $600,000 for 21. But the 2.5% that you're seeing, the increase, was based on the current salary, which already had fiscal year 20's total reward implementation on top of it. So does that make sense? So I would have to subtract that out and then get you that number.
You don't have to subtract that out. I just want to, I would like to know what the 2.5% merit is kind of moving forward. What's being proposed now, not versus what it was last year. So keeping total rewards happening, what would it look like if there was a 2% merit versus a 2.5% merit or 3% merit? I guess I just want to know what that percentage is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Just a few thoughts. I'm going to circle back around to something I brought up earlier. I do expect gas tax money to be significantly lower, so actually, let me back up a little bit further. The lens through which I'm going to be making budget decisions this year really is going to be focused on how we can best help people impacted the most by the pandemic recover and stay stabilized. So one of the I think default urges is going to be cut certain services to save expenditures, but the people that depend on those services the most are likely the ones that have been impacted the most and will continue to be impacted for quite some time. And so just to allude back to something the city manager said at the beginning with gas tax, there's really two places our gas tax goes in very general terms: transit and road repair and construction, but we haven't really constructed a road in at least a generation. So I want to know what those trade-offs are. And Mr. Manager, I'm kind of saying this to you for everything. Like, what if we're gonna bounce the budget through decrements? What are the trade-offs that we should be considering? And I say that with the understanding, and this is probably something I need to get Phil Mann's answer on, is we've been working towards 62nd for a long time, and it's definitely the road in the worst condition that's a city road, a city owned and controlled road. And so I don't want to negatively impact RTS at all, because that's a high priority need for some of our residents. Now, we're going to learn a lot too, by the way. I know I've been talking to a lot of bike shop owners. They've been selling a lot of bikes, and a lot of those bikes they're selling are to people who don't have a car, and so they need a way to get to work other than an automobile, and they don't want to ride the bus anymore. They don't feel safe riding the bus, being in confined spaces, and so they started riding their bikes. So I mean, there's going to be things like this that we're going to need, like Melissa McCready and Phil Mann and folks to do some deeper analysis to try to be a little more predictive of where our needs are going to fall. And so anyway, I don't want to delay 62nd anymore, because it's just going to get more expensive and more difficult. But I agree that other sort of non-critical road repairs are a preferable trade-off to transit.
Mayor, we're not planning on delaying 62nd. It's in the final permitting stage.
Yeah, good. Okay. That was my only concern when we talk about road stuff, that one we got to finish that one up. Good. I'm glad to hear that. As far as pay goes, so I've done several budgets in terrible economic times, and it is always tempting, and in fact, the preferred options by some commissions to not give raises. I want us to be very careful about the equity of doing that. The vast majority of our workforce are under union contract. And so when we talk about not giving merit increases, we're talking about the folks in our organization who are not represented by one of our unions. And so it's really, to me, not equitable to try to balance the budget on a minority of people who work for the city. It also, I think, brings to the surface something that we as a commission need to be very, very deliberate about as we negotiate future contracts. I believe that we need to work with our union leadership to put crisis clauses in the contract, certain thresholds that would trigger an automatic reopening. And I know we can reopen, or we can try to reopen different parts of the contract every year, but I think if we work on agreeing to certain sort of triggers or automatic stabilizers, when we're not in the middle of a crisis, it becomes, we get better decisions that are reasonable and that both sides can agree to, that would be in the best interest of our employees, our community builders, as well as the health of the overall organization and the expectations that our neighbors have from our city. And so we're not there right now, but for most of you, you will now have been through several contract negotiations, and that's not anything that's ever come up. And I think it would be a reasonable and valuable discussion to have. Again, I know we're going to get into details at future meetings, but I agree that we need to digitize our city's records. I don't think that we need to digitize our city's records this year. They can sit in files for another year to free up a little bit of money there. Mr. Manager, I think it's also, we've taken a few passes in the past at trying to lease out the restaurant and bar space at Ironwood and not gotten really strong responses, but it may be, it may be a good opportunity once again to explore that and maybe even broaden who or what might go in there, just to get us, the city's just not in the bar and restaurant business. And if we could get paid a little bit of money for someone else to go in and run the bar and restaurant operation and save a significant amount of money on temp force labor, I think that takes some of the risk away from us. It might actually be more successful and effective because you have somebody in there that really knows the business well. I'm saying that when one of the business models that's going to be struggling the most for a while are bars and restaurants, and so but it might be a good time to get our creative hats on and start thinking about, okay, well, what might that look like down the road? Because that could be a big help to the facility out there on both sides of that. And then, I had the same question. If we could delay the pool item for a year or two, I would prefer to do that. All that being said, usually we can stretch our tax dollar further during recessions. And so we don't want to completely abandon things like capital projects and upgrades because you can get a lot more done, as the sort of market changes out there. It gets you 1 year, but then it costs you more down the road, a lot more down the road when you have to go and do it anyway. Okay, so those are my thoughts. I'm not going to be supportive of raising the millage. I know that we're close enough where we can balance the budget without doing that. The fire assessment, I'm on the fence about. I'd like to keep it where it is now, but I also don't want to start getting away from that 50% sort of goal that we have. And the more years that we keep it the same, the harder it is to catch up. So I'm more of a supporter of incremental increases to keep it stable than otherwise. Okay, back around the horn, Commissioner Warren.
You're muted, Ellen.
Mr. Warren, are you on mute or are you? Is that an old
I had
hand?
to hit two buttons.
Okay, gotcha. We can hear you now.
Yes. So a quick question related to page 10 of the general fund baseline, fiscal year 2021. When you Karen, when you identified that we had about $3 million in basically, I guess, reserves because of vacancies, was that included on page 10 with what our expenditures would have been with those vacancies not present?
No, you do not see vacancies in any of these slides. So you have to be careful when we talk about vacancies. So that's, projecting that your current vacancy is not being hired for the rest of the year. So, and that's not going to happen. So
I'm sorry.
You know what I mean? Like,
could you just repeat that last 30 seconds?
Sure. So no vacancies are anywhere in this budget. And when we talk about vacancies, when I tell you that number, that's saying that all your vacancies today will never be hired for the rest of the year. And obviously that's not going to be the case. So
okay.
Your vacancy savings changes every time you hire somebody. It's constantly moving.
Well, and with that instance, there's always an incoming and outgoing tide. There's always somebody leaving and opening up a vacancy. So I was just, that answered the question I had. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts, and thank you to the city manager for adding some clarification there. So, Ms. Fiore, let's go ahead and continue with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. As I get back to the slide, I just wanted to make note that the rental housing implementation of $150,000 that was approved in fiscal year 20 has not yet been spent.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, before we go on, there's one thing I meant to circle back to, and I forgot. I got a call from a constituent of ours who is a landlord, and she was asking if we had considered cutting the landlord license fee, like maybe 50%, as part of an economic relief effort, which just on its surface, we don't necessarily know that a landlord license fee cut or forgiveness plan would go to, like, if they're still collecting rent and they just pay a lower license fee, that's not really helpful to the people trying to serve. But I did want to put in your ear, Mr. Feldman, perhaps we could do something where we reduce the landlord license fee or forgave the landlord license fee if there was proof that they passed 100% of that savings on to their tenants. And so a lot of landlords would probably not take us up on that, but some of them would, since it would be no cost to them. What I would want to know is what would the impact be on the city revenues if we were to do something like that. And I don't expect an answer from you now, but if you maybe want to ask your folks what that would look like if we still are seeing the need for some sort of rent relief out there. It's a possible way to get at that. So anyway, just a food for thought. Ms. Fiore, back to you.
Thank you. So now looking at some funds that contributions to other funds, we contribute to our general insurance fund. The general fund contribution for the insurance premiums on average is about $2 million a year. And then the general fund insurance whole or revenues, which again, this comes from GRU and the city, the general government side, is about 6.6 million on average on revenues, and expenditures about 6.7 million. You can see there in fiscal year 17, there was a bump in expenditures up to 8.2 million. And the note states that in fiscal year 17, 1.2 million equity transfer from this fund went to the employee health and benefits fund. So that's why you're seeing that that bump for 17 for expenditures. It was a transfer.
Commissioner Ward, did you have a question on this slide?
You can wait, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And the only other thing I wanted to make note about this slide is you can see the increase in expenditures for 21, 8.7. So this fund, we have employees charged to this fund. So you have increase in salary due to total rewards, as well as this fund contributes as pays an indirect cost to the general fund. So that cost allocation increased as well in fiscal year 21. Just to look at this fund for fiscal year 18 and 19, the comparison, personnel services, you can see 19 went down slightly. Insurance premiums you can see for 18, it's much lower than 19. 19 number is correct. What happened in 18, and I'm sorry I didn't have this as a note, but the expense hit the wrong line. It went to $700,000 went to stop loss instead of insurance premiums. So you're not seeing that reflected correctly here. So you would have to add another $700,000 to that line, and it would be in line with fiscal year 19. Claims page, you can see there was a little bit more in fiscal year 19 compared to 20, and the operating expenses pretty much stayed flat.
Commissioner Warren, you had a question?
No, I was removed. I lowered my hand, I believe.
Okay, I will get Marie to take that off. There we go. All right, Ms. Fiore.
Okay. So again, looking at the numbers, our baseline, adjusted baseline, we're at $278,000 deficit. These increments that we just went through would increase the deficit to $1.5 million. Can't stress enough, we're still waiting for that June 1st number. We may have some changes with our state sales tax, revenue sharing, and the local option gas tax after we hear our June and July estimates from the Department of Revenue. We're not recommending the use of any of these budgetary levers that we just went through. Again, the city manager does not recommend the use of fund balance. And we haven't heard, besides a little bit of conversation today, increments that perhaps the commission wants to see included. Again, early on the budget cycle, the city manager is meeting with the department, as mentioned, on Monday to vet through all the increments. So this list, again, will probably change. So before we move on to fund balance policy, are there any more questions here?
Yeah, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not specific to this, but it reminded me that about a year and a half ago, if not 2 years ago, we directed the city manager's office, previous city manager, to investigate employee health insurance and how we might rethink that. And I know that there was some research that went into it, but we never heard back on it. I'd really love for that to be a conversation again.
It will be. We've hired a consultant commissioner and working with that consultant to look at options for restructuring our health plan so we can have those in place for January 1st of 2021 when our plan year begins. So
I appreciate that. I will tell you that one of the things that, and this is not directed at any individual, really, it's not, but I am going to do a better job of keeping track of the things that we ask to be done as a commission that don't come back to us. We have a long history of the commission votes for something and it disappears. And again, that is not directed at anyone. And if anything, it's my fault. If I bring something up and we vote to do it, shame on me for not following up. So expect me to talk about that sort of thing more. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Ms. Fiore.
Thank you. So our fund balance. So our current general fund, unassigned fund balance policy states that we must have 10% of the adopted general fund revenue budget. And anything above the 10% can be used for budget fluctuations and unanticipated emergencies such as natural disasters, public safety emergencies, and capital emergencies. The reserve cannot be used for solving recurring revenue shortfalls. And if the general fund reserve falls below 10%, if less than 5%, then that entire amount must be budgeted in whole for the following budget cycle. If it's more than 5%, then there will be a plan put in place to make that up over a 3-year period. After meeting the 10%, sorry, I'm reading this last Basically, it can be used for commission-driven one-time increment expenses. And we like to be able to visit our fund balance policy every 5 years. And so looking back into when we actually made some changes to our fund balance policy, it was back in 2015. So we went from 8.33% fund balance policy to 10%. So our unassigned fund balance at 9/30/19 was 25.5 million, which is 20% of the fiscal year 19 adopted revenue budget. Some projected addition and uses of fund balance was $5.1 million. And so this is your one-time expenditures. Remember that there was $455,000 or $445,000, I'm sorry, use of fund balance to balance fiscal year 20's budget. You had one-time increment approved during fiscal year 20, as well as recurring items that happened in fiscal year 20. So this resulted in $5.1 million use of that fund balance. And then the estimated fiscal year 20 ending balance of 20.3 million, which was approximately 15% of fiscal year 20's adopted revenue budget. So 10% of that requirement would be 13.2 million. So you can see here that we have an excess of $7.1 million in fund balance projected. The city manager would like to propose changing the fund balance policy from 10% to 16.7% with a maximum of 25%. And this will be based on the following year's budgeted expenditures and transfers, so no longer on the revenue side. And the unassigned fund balance that's over the 25% may be transferred as following. It can be used for temporary loss of revenue up to 50%. It can balance it can be used for emergency reserve, capital projects, facility maintenance, and commission increments. Again, this is above the 25%. So to look at 16.7 fund balance, you can see there that you would need $22.1 million in reserve, and currently we would be short $1.7 million.
Okay, Ms. Fiore, if you could pause there. Commissioner Ariola.
Mr. Mayor, it wasn't for a question. I just wanted to speak to the general fund unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, go ahead. This is because that's the last slide on this.
Very well. I think this is extremely important for us to adopt. My biggest concern for the remainder of this budget process, as we've been talking about, how do we get a figure on the real numbers? My biggest concern is that, we still have hurricane season to go through. And if we have another Irma level event, or as we did that year, if we have a couple of hurricanes roll through like that, we could be in big trouble. So I think it's very important that we begin to take steps to put more money into reserves. As far as an overall budget philosophy, I think the most important thing is to just try and get as much information as we can before we start spending additional increments. I think the most important thing right now is to remain healthy as we go throughout the year, because it may not be just one period of long recovery. There may be several false economic starts where we have slips into larger recession numbers, or perhaps even depression numbers. So I think this is an extremely, extremely important tool of ours, because if we get to a point where our revenue projections are not going to meet our shortfalls, I don't want us to be in a place where we are looking to increase revenues to make up for those shortfalls. And I also don't want us to be in a place where we can dip into these unassigned fund balances, which I view these as the funds that keep the government secure in how it spends its money during times of emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ariola. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree with Commissioner Ariola. I think it's important that we start putting money into our emergency reserve fund, and we just don't know the unknown with natural disasters and pandemics. And I think as a city, we need to start investing more in our emergency reserve fund. So I wanted to agree with what Commissioner Ariola said. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Feldman, you didn't pull 16.7 out of a hat. You clear. It's such a specific number. You clearly had a reason for landing on that. Can you help the rest of us through why you believe that's the right fund balance to try to target?
So the Government Finance Officers Association, I believe, is the one that recommended between 2 and 3 months of operating expenditures as the reserve. So 2 months represents 16.7%. It actually 16.666, but it extends, if I remember my math, with that bar on top. And then 25% represents the 3 months. So ideally, we would be in a sweet spot between 16.7 and 25. But the way the policy would work is that we just don't want to have too much cash laying around. So once we hit the 25%, then we would be obligated to come back to the commission and say, these are things that we ought to be doing, whether they're one-time expenditures, commission increments, or the so forth. So we want to be in that 2 to 3 month sweet spot.
Okay, thank you. I'm willing to consider this. I'm not sold yet. We had a big debate about this several years ago on the commission, and it was a good debate. It actually was one of those things that took a lot of the attention at many of our budget meetings. The trade-off, of course, is that the higher reserves, the more that we need to put towards reserves, either the fewer services that we're able to provide for our neighbors, or the more pressure there is on things like millage or fire assessment. And so we just need to think about those. But we have had this discussion starting with when Anthony Lyons was still the city manager, of establishing a specific disaster reserve fund that would be independent of the general reserve fund. And part of the thinking there was that it would be where you could spend down money that you had some degree of confidence would be reimbursed by, say, FEMA or some other source. And so it'd be kind of an evergreen fund. You'd spend it down, it would get filled back up, and you wouldn't be putting millage, ad valorem taxes into that every year. So I guess what I'm saying right now, Mr. Feldman, is I want to think more about it and think more about the trade-offs and costs, and maybe think about bifurcating. Say 2/3 of it is for general reserves, sort of undesignated reserves, and 1/3 of it is for a specific fund to be used only in cases of natural disaster, health, pandemic, a couple things that are very specific and restrict the fund in that way, so and nobody's touching it for any other reason. So that's kind of where I am on that. But I've tended to be more supportive of healthier reserves historically, and I don't see myself changing all of a sudden. Mr. Feldman, did you want to chime in there?
So two points real quick. We're in another slide, we'll have the discussion about our recommendation for that emergency reserve fund policy as well. But the other thing I should have pointed out when we talk about the level of reserves, we borrow money, and the healthier our reserves are, the lower cost of borrowing that money will be. Right now, we have a bond rating of AA minus. And one of my goals will be to improve our bond rating. And to do that, we'll need some healthier reserves than what we have.
Very good. Thank you. That's we've heard that. We've heard that second point many, many times. So we've been talking about GRU decisions. Commissioner Warren.
Thank you. Yeah, thinking about back when I came on in 2014, we also had the settlement of the Crystal River nuclear plant that brought, I can't remember how much money it brought in, but it was also during the period of time that we were really working hard to see how we could reduce the energy bills for the citizens here. And I don't know if Diane or Karen remember how much we had then, and at some point we got down pretty low, and where we are now. Is there a way of showing the history of that?
Diane, were you still with GRU when the Crystal River payment came through? We might need to ask somebody from GRU.
Yeah, I would defer to GRU. I just don't remember. But yeah, that was the 2015, 16-ish period.
Yeah.
When that Crystal River stuff finally got settled.
But that was on the GRU side of the ledger.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I didn't know how far it came. It's my Texas call telling me I've got some Chinese music to play. Gosh. Okay, well, then I mixed the two up because I was thinking that it impacted on that discussion too. But yes, I think we all agree it's good to have money in savings.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we get a quick update on how much, if anything, FEMA still owes us?
Mr. Mayor, this is Diane. We have probably about $1 million that we're still waiting on. We've had to go back and forth with them on some of the documentation, and that is all solid waste money. It's not general fund money.
Very good, thanks. Okay, moving on to our emergency reserve fund policy, Ms. Fiore.
Thank you. So Mayor, you kind of already did this slide for me. So as you recall, no, that's okay. A few years ago, maybe it was last year, I think it was 2 years ago, we put this emergency reserve fund policy in front of the commission, but it was never adopted. And so we're bringing it back, just saying, hey, we really like to get this formally adopted. So as you mentioned, it would be a percentage of our taxable value each year. So it would be 2/100% of the taxable value of the property in the city on July 1st of that year. And then if the unassigned fund balance is below the minimal amount at year end, transfers should be made from the general fund in the amount sufficient to increase the fund balance above the minimum amount within 3 years. So this fund can be used for pandemics, such as we're going through today, and we are using that fund today for that reason. Major weather events, so this would prevent us from having to hit fund balance during hurricane season. And unanticipated non-GRU infrastructure failures and unanticipated catastrophic events. So an example here, our taxable value on July 1, 7.2 billion. The 0.02 would require us to be 1.4 million in reserves. So this fund, at the time I did this presentation, had a little over $1 million in it. So in fiscal year 19, when we transferred $1 million into this fund to start the fund off. And then we had some storms happen and we had some FEMA reimbursement. So that's how you ended up with a little over $1 million. I do expect about $500,000 to come through from FEMA. I know Diane had just mentioned $1 million there. So we're on track in this fund currently. We just really want to formalize that. As of today, though, I will note that due to the COVID COVID-19 issues, we've expended $740,000 out of this fund. So with that said, we're moving into hurricane season, and we're already now down to just a few $100,000 in this fund. So what are we doing next? So we're going to look at the RTS transfer that we're doing from the general fund. Do they really need that $879,000 this year due to the CARES Act funding that they will be receiving? We need to look at our park and revenue and expenses and those internal service fund chargebacks, such as the fleet and the health insurance. Are we contributing enough, or are we contributing too much? And look at our current CIP projects. You know, are these projects old? Are they finished? Can we close them out and repurpose that budget for other needed CIP expenditures? So our future meetings, we have May 28th is our next meeting, and I could use some help from the commission and leadership on what you would like to talk about on May 28th. As we've repeated multiple times in this presentation, we will not have numbers until June 1st. So I wouldn't be able to provide you with updated numbers on May 28th. You have June 4th where you're setting the preliminary fire assessment, and we have an additional meeting on June 9th, which I would anticipate would be when we could talk about the revised general fund numbers, especially after you already set your max fire assessment. And that is all I have for this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Fiore. Appreciate all that. Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms. Fiore, can the commission get a list of the expenditures out of the Emergency Reserve Fund for the COVID-19, what we're going through right now? I think you said it about $700,000 has been spent. Can we just have a list of what that's been spent on?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We'll provide that to the commission. Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First question is on the solid waste fund and getting, I mean, we have a few other funds. When is it planned to discuss all of the other funds and their budgets?
Mr. Feldman, did you want to take this, or did you want me to reply?
Oh, you can reply.
So typically during the second year of a 2-year budget, we focus on the general fund. With that said, we still reviewed all the other funds with the city manager, and he looked at each of those and if we were charging appropriately for each of those funds. But we were not planning to do a full presentation on all other funds to the commission.
Okay. One thing I mean, this is not really for, it's kind of starting this budget year, not this budget year, but is looking at changing how we collect the solid waste fee and putting it on property taxes versus putting it on the monthly GRU bill. And that would be able to lower the GRU bill. Also, one increment that I would like for us to look at is the pilot home composting program, the solid waste fund. But I know that may not be something to do, but it's something I'd like for us to kind of see what the cost would be there. The second one is on broadband infrastructure. As we've seen in this pandemic, this is one of the most necessary things that we have going on, and everyone is in essence reliant on having home internet and being able to access in essence the world now, because everyone's being home, from education to being able to work from home. One of the things that I would like for us to look into, and I think this by going in this direction, we might be able to move broadband more to being able to provide free services, provide more subsidies to be able to address a lot of the issues that we're having, and look at transitioning GRUCOM from GRU to general government. I think might give us more flexibility in being able to provide kind of looking more at like affordable service and being able to provide more free service into neighborhoods, into places that need it. GRU is much more focused on bringing on revenue, and that's I think what they should be. And I don't know if we should be looking at GRU and internet service in this time as a place to bring in revenue. So that's one thing I'd just like for us to explore. Maybe it's not something that happens this budget year or not, but I would like for us to kind of just look at what would that mean in terms of if there was a transition of GRUCOM from GRU to general government. Thank you, Mr.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I would ask for is looking at the things about climate change, really excited with a group that we're continuing to meet in the community to discuss this, but still again, when I find lights are on in the office and in the bathrooms and nobody's in all weekend, my one request would be to get an energy audit done of our buildings and offices. We should be leading the way and being efficient and not leaving lights on and computers. And another thing, it's kind of crazy when our buildings are so cold that all our work crews have to have a heater on under their desks in the winter. You know, that just is crazy. So an energy audit would be Commissioner Warren's last request for 241 this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
250, I could ask another.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would reiterate something I've talked about in the past, and I don't know if this is the right place for us to start running through a list of commission increments, but I would like us to revisit the cost and usefulness of removing the rate structure from RTS for particularly those over 65 and those 18 and under, as well as expanding the use of the last mile, first mile routes. I know that those are difficult things to talk about, but I want them to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor, and Commissioner Ward, thanks for bringing that up. I think we need to have that conversation as well. And also looking at the MV transport and what role we can play. I know we staff went back and did some research on it, but I would really like to revisit that again. Looking at 65 and older and our school age kids being able to utilize RTS for free. I wanted to ask Commissioner Hayes Santos. He was wanting to the broadband and GRUCOM. Would it be more appropriate if the Digital Access Committee worked together and came up with one or two focus areas, and then maybe have the city manager come back with something?
Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think this is a city manager kind of, I think it's city manager and GRU. It's not something that just falls into one, because for one to take it, the other has to give it, I guess. Yeah. So I guess just looking at what that mean. I mean, we're not really holding any meetings for any of the committees, and I have no idea when we're going to start. In this essence, is kind of a budgetary decision of what budgetary pile does the department fall into. So I was just like a kind of a quick analysis, not something in depth, but just kind of quick analysis of what that is. But I agree, it should be looked at, I think, later in the Digital Access Committee too. But just as part of this kind of budgetary discussion, I'd like to be part of that.
So I guess my question is, can we have the I was maybe a summarization of where we are so far in the Digital Access Committee? Can we have that guide the conversation as it relates to the budgetary conversation? Because if you're asking for something that we're not ready or talked about in Digital Access Committee, I think we're creating something else, an additional layer. And maybe I'm looking at it differently. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're consistent throughout the course of the digital access, the GRUCOM, the broadband, and we're not going another way when we should be staying the course as a committee and making sure that, you know, whatever questions we have, it's a committee question, and we do it as a committee. That's just my opinion, but by all means you can ask whatever you want to. I just thought that as a committee we should do it together, or at least be on the same thought pattern of what questions to ask as a committee. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Santos.
I guess when are we going to start holding committee meetings again? I mean, that's kind of one of the main things. I mean, I agree. I wanted to kind of bring this up in the Digital Access Committee, but we've canceled the past 3 meetings. So I agree with you. I think that would be a better place, but we're just not having committee meetings. So when there's kind of emergency, things are kind of changing than what they normally would be.
And I mean, is it just possible we could get an update from our last committee meeting, and maybe that addresses some of your concerns, and use that update or that summary to give that to staff, if it includes the request that you're asking.
I don't think we've talked about this in digital access. Okay. It's not something that we discussed in there. I think we could. I agree.
And that's my point. That's my point. We haven't discussed it in digital access committee, but but that's fine. I just thought that we would all stay on the same course. But I understand the emergency situation, and I totally get it. So, thank you.
Thanks. And before I get to the city manager, Ms. Fiore, can you unshare your screen, please, just so I can see everybody better? I don't think we need the presentation anymore. Mr. Feldman, thank you.
So, Mayor, Commissioners, just 2 points I wanted to address. One is I believe we have a Digital Access Committee meeting scheduled for June 8th. On there, committee meetings are still very difficult for us because of the public participation element, and making sure that we, Facebook Live, and we have the public comment piece on there, and we can broadcast on Channel 12 and not overlap with the county commission meetings. So it's a little bit tricky for us to have those, but we're working with the clerk to make sure we can have it with as much participation as we can. With regard to the non-ad valorem assessments that Commissioner Hayes Santos mentioned, from a legislative statutory time frame, the earliest non-ad valorem assessments can be in place would be for the fiscal year 22 budget. And to take that action, the commission would, I believe the first deadline is in December of this year. So we'll be bringing that discussion to the commission to talk about it with regard to nuisance abatements, solid waste, and anything else you'd like to have enough time that we can get it in place for fiscal year 22.
Okay, thank you for the update. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, I was going to point out also that we do have a digital access meeting scheduled. And I want to thank the manager's office and the clerk's office and everyone involved on the backside for making not only these meetings, but all the subsidiary meetings possible. We have to have those meetings. We have to function even though it's not normal, and there's nothing okay about what the circumstances we're in. The city business continues to move forward, and if we had kind of a 2-month hole in our calendar being able to move anything forward, and I recognize that it's difficult, and I appreciate the effort that the staff in various charter offices puts forward to make sure that we can have these meetings, but they're absolutely necessary, including the committee meetings and the advisory meetings that will start happening soon as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're having a digital access committee on the 8th, then Commissioner Sims, I think that would be the best place to discuss it.
I agree.
Thank you. And the other thing, we have our retreat coming up, and I know you all got asked the same questions as I got asked. And one of those questions was, what are your top priorities? What do you want to see happen at the end of the year, at the end of 5 years? And so I think that's one of my, well, I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I understand the value of the committee structure, but there's some of us who have not been a part of that dialogue. And so I am hoping and I'm expecting at our retreat for us to talk about a few things. And I think one of those big things needs to be broadband access and digital access. Because I really want to circle back around to Commissioner Santos' point that if we knew we had a problem before the pandemic, it's been substantially exaggerated. And we, so in my professional sector in teaching, we've been sharing a lot of stories with one another about who was actually more successful when we went virtual. I have a bunch of my students who actually did better than in live sections. We have a bunch of students who dropped off a cliff. And, those are typically students that you would think would be completely connected. When we're talking about our elementary school age kids and our middle school age kids, and parents that are or are not able to work from home because of that, it has reached crisis levels. And there are several solutions out there. We need to figure out which one works the best for us, and we need to get moving forward with it very quickly. I don't know what reputable news sources that you all listen to. I have not heard anybody at this point say that they don't expect a second surge of the virus, probably hitting sometime this fall, meaning we're going to be right back. I mean, we're going to be right back to the same challenge from both an providing quality education, which, by the way, I think we'll get better at, and I think we'll do better the second time, as we've had, instead of a weekend for me to be able to prepare, this time I'll have months, to really think about it. But it's still going to exacerbate our already existing problem. And we are in a position to do something about it. And so that is something that I think it's important for the entire commission to think about collectively, to give an indication about where we want to head, because this is not one of those 25, 30-year questions that he was asking us about. This is an immediate a need, and it's completely rooted in our equity goals in so many different ways. So I'm ready to, I'm happy to let the digital access talk about it on June 8th, but we as a commission, I think really owe it to ourselves to talk about it at the retreat as well. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Mayor, and you're absolutely right. And I think what's really, really important is how we define digital access. And what I mean by defining that, is it going to be considered a utility? Is it going to be considered a major infrastructure? So I think we need to have GRU to the table as we have these conversations, because internet and broadband it's a utility now. It's part of the makeup. So we have to define that and have a conversation, I think, based on what the definition is and how we defined it.
Yeah, very good. Excellent point. Okay, Larry, do we have any callers on the line? We don't have a motion, but did want to give the opportunity if members of the public have been listening in and wanted to share their thoughts.
Yeah, no, sir, we don't have any callers.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, well, with that, Mr. Feldman, do you have any last questions that you want to, is there anything we didn't share with you that you need before moving forward?
I'm good, Mayor.
Okay. I just encourage each commissioner to reach out to the manager or any of the charters if it has to do with their part of the organization between now and our next meeting. If there are things that you kind of, I mean, things always pop into our head, especially at 1 in the morning when we can't sleep. And so if there are things that you want to discuss or just clarification questions you have, just let them know and they can make that part of that discussion at our May 28th meeting. With that, Madam Clerk, I believe our next item is a verbal update about COVID-19.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Who wants to? Mr. Feldman, you want to? Yeah, actually, Mr. Feldman, can you give us a high level? We had our meeting today with the other mayors and the county, and there was some clarification, and there's been some loosening up of park access and different things like that.
So again, our
questions from the commission.
Our goal is to be consistent with the county and the other cities. I sent the commission a note a couple hours ago regarding limited opening of parks to be consistent. We're looking at tennis courts in a reduced capacity, dog parks, and the golf course. We're not planning on opening pools or community centers or ball fields or playgrounds until phase 2. We did have some internal discussion today about the skate park. And initially we were looking at opening the skate park up at Possum Creek, but based upon our ability to keep social distancing, I told staff not to proceed in that course. I think one of the big topics on the call this morning was whether churches are regulated under the county order and the governor's order. I think the governor's order is clear that it does not pertain to churches. The county believes that their order incorporates churches just like any type of auditorium with a restriction of 1 person for every 500 square feet. We will be in a monitoring mode over the weekend, and don't plan on visiting churches or any other religious institution unless we get some sort of complaint, and then we'll deal with it as on a case-by-case basis as we need to. But I'm not going to be directing our staff to be shutting down church services.
And on that point, Mr. Feldman, I thought that Chair Hutchinson mentioned there was some sort of best practices guidance that was being shared with them, that they were going to maybe post on the website, so churches that did want to try to open, they could refer to these guidelines. Is that, am I remembering that right?
He mentioned that, but I haven't seen them. So
okay, yeah, I haven't either.
There. With regard to GNV Cares, we have, for neighbors, we have, as of this morning, we had 577 applications and more coming throughout the day. GNV Cares for Business just opened up today, and we are in the application cycle for both of those. And we will be sharing a sing-along video shortly. It'll be posted on our site to the tune of Lean On Me, and 2 of you are featured stars in that production.
It's so terrifying. I don't know the last time I heard myself sing with that, so I'm listening to the karaoke track on my headphones and then singing into the computer, and boy, that's a harsh reality check right there.
It was a pretty harsh reality. Yes, sir.
But hey, man, we're authentic, right? Commissioner Ward, you had your hand up, your virtual hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am in awe of the 2 of you who were willing to do that. I did not have the nerve to do so. So
wait a minute, only 2 of us did it?
Only 2 of you did
it. Nobody asked me. I would have been happy to do it. I would have asked Sharon to step in for me.
I didn't know about it. I would have done it.
Oh man, I thought this was one for all and all for one. Oh.
I will do lots of things.
Are you the other one that did it?
I did.
is you, me and Helen?
Yeah.
The rest of you are on my list. Wait till assignments come out for the next year.
Flo had to leave.
Okay, I'm sorry, Harvey. I got distracted. Go ahead.
As far as COVID-19 relief goes, my understanding is that the county is unable to, I'll choose that word carefully, participate in housing folks who Mr. DeCarmine at Grace has been able to deem the most vulnerable. My understanding is there's a list of, I think, 27 folks that he's been able to winnow down, the people who frankly are most likely to die if coronavirus is introduced into Grace campus. It seems to me that it will cost our community, specifically our hospitals, an enormous amount of money if some large portion of those 27 people end up in ICU for an extended period of time, knowing that they don't have health insurance, they can't pay for it. I've talked with the manager about this a few days ago, and I was really hoping that the county would come to a different decision earlier this week. I'd like us to have as much conversation as we can about what the possibilities are and whether or not we can take action to help out with that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. It's along some of the same lines of what Harvey was saying. I'm also interested in all the possibilities. I have absolutely not given up on the county with this. I do know that there are some discussions. I think that Paul Myers holds some power with what he is allowed to say that FEMA can reimburse the county and the city for. And I also know that there is about $500,000 that is sitting there for permanent supportive rehousing that has not been spent because of them deciding to make a different decision last year with the Grace funding. So like I said, I have not given up on the county yet. They can still make a different decision. But I still think it's important for us to have all the information and have that discussion at our next city-county meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that agenda, we have two items on the agenda, COVID-19 and the Joint Aviation Unit. This could easily this discussion could fall under the COVID-19 item. So certainly we can do that. And we'll just lean on our staff to try to get as much information as possible together for us. Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Commissioner Johnson's point, I mean, they have the money. They made the decision that they were going to house people, and we were going to just do this emergency stuff at Grace, and they need to spend those dollars on it. I think we need to make sure that they do what they were supposed to do, and not, because if we give it on this, then they're never going to pay for anything ever again. If we pay for this, we need to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Hopefully we can come to that resolution on Tuesday. I do have a question in terms of the county. Do they have any other meetings scheduled to discuss their emergency orders before our meeting on Tuesday?
No, the question was asked of Chair Hutchinson and County Manager Lieberman if they plan to revise their emergency order anytime soon. And Commissioner Hutchinson indicated that he did not have any plans to do that. He said if he did, he would try to do it by end of business Friday to go into effect Monday to give people a couple days to adjust. But he didn't say there was anything else that they were thinking about changing. Okay. So I don't expect there to be any revision between now and Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Commissioner Ward, are you good? Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. Could we, since it's on the agenda, a broad COVID-19 on Tuesday, could we take action, and could the county take action on spending issues like like housing people? Because time is of the essence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, if it is in any way related to COVID-19, it's noticed as that, and certainly we can take action.
Thank you.
Or they can take action. Okay, I just want to thank everybody for how involved you've been, our staff. Things are changing every single hour of every single day. But it's, if you listen to the telephone town hall last night, I mean, I know they're sort of obligated to say what they said at the beginning, but there was a note of sincerity definitely within the comments of Dr. Fox and Dr. Brody. And there has been a very high degree of coordination. The lines of communication have been pretty good. I know there have been moments when information wasn't shared as quickly as we would wish, but other times it's been very open. I'll just give you an example. As the county was looking at amending their order to allow for limited pool use, they took all of our recommendations and incorporated them into the order. So I know that's a lot of stuff that y'all aren't maybe seeing on a moment by moment basis. But it's been, while not perfect, it's been very, very good. And I think we're in a lot better situation than a lot of communities around the state or around the country. I think right now we're just all on pins and needles about phase 2. What constitutes a reasonable, what they call the gatekeeping to get to phase 2, because that really that essentially is going to mean no restrictions on businesses. I mean, they say there's some, but it's at 50%, and that's really normal business. That also probably means we're going to be required to go back to in-person meetings, although he could modify something to allow this to continue to happen, which will make public participation very difficult with social distancing requirements. So that's sort of the kind of behind the scenes, and that's true of all of our mayors in Alachua County, all of our managers in Alachua County. And we're not hearing a lot out of Tallahassee as to when that might happen. So we'll, I just encourage you to stay in touch with our charters, and as soon as they know any useful information, then they'll make sure to let you know. And we'll, if we have to just schedule an emergency meeting, we will. If not, we'll, deal with it. We'll make sure that this item is on every agenda that we have, so we can take action if we need to. So Larry, I think you said that we did have a caller.
We do, Mayor. Stand by for 1 second. Should have Theresa on the line. Theresa, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Just stay in touch with.
Hello, my name is Theresa Tonner. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just great.
Okay, great. I am a registered nurse here in the county, retired. My husband is a practicing pulmonologist, so we're pretty well informed about the worldwide status of cases and spikes and plateaus and reductions and respikes, because we kind of keep up with that. And so I am really glad to hear that, one, the COVID-19 pandemic situation is being kind of put on a higher priority than every other thing, because I think that is appropriate. That ties in also with a comment about like moving to phase 2. Personally, most of the medical people I know feel like our governor is going too quickly. And I'm hoping that locally, from what I've seen, I think we're more careful, and I appreciate that. And I think that the ramifications of what's going on is going to extend well beyond the next month or two. So I think there's going to be a lot of things in the next year relating to survival and schools, it's an opening or versus not opening, that is going to be very, very different. And I do not think we're going to get back to any kind of pre-pandemic normalcy, if ever, but certainly not in the near future. So I'm really appreciate that you guys are realizing that that's something that we really have to kind of put an emphasis on. And I'm trying to think what was the third thing that I wanted to say. COVID-19. Well, I guess I can't remember because the COVID-19 is such a priority. So thank you for doing that. And also, I appreciate hearing that you're going to realize that opening back up is going to be a very process that needs to be very carefully considered, and that we're not going to put people at risk. For instance, opening up the public schools for children, just not appropriate, not appropriate at this time, and probably not for this fall. And I hope that medical science will dictate those decisions as opposed to the economy. And certainly the economy is important, and because people have to survive, they have to maintain their households, they have to buy food, they have to have access to health care. Oh, I remember the third thing.
Mayor, excuse me for interrupting. I just wanted to mention the time limit. You're welcome to.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Do you have a?
We have a 3-minute time limit. Yeah. Just to be able to be equitable to everybody. But I'll tell you what, you've got some.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, quickly. And you can also email the commission. There's an email link that you hit all of us at once if you want to share additional thoughts or just your past experience with this as well. But yeah, really quickly, one last thought.
Really quickly, on a very immediate basis today, GPD, against CDC guidelines, are kicking out homeless people in areas of the city and making them move. They've given them 6 hours.
Yeah, ma'am, I can speak to that. I have an update on that. We were told about that, and I can give you an update on that. There were 3 or 4 individuals that were camped out on a State Department of Corrections site. State Department of Corrections.
Oh.
They called GPD. We have an obligation to answer. We can't ignore calls. And CDC, I believe, Mr. Manager, was told they do not have permission from the State Department of Corrections to be there. And we're told they needed to vacate by 5 o'clock.
Right.
And I do believe we have people working with them to find them somewhere else that they can legally stay and be able to move their possessions. We have not made any arrests. We do not plan on making any arrests, but we did have to answer the call and it's not a Gainesville decision, it's the DOC decision.
Yeah, and now that that's clarified, see, none of that information was included, which sometimes is a safety measure too. I didn't realize that they were on that kind of property. You can't have that.
But we're trying to work with them on that.
Great, because following the CDC guidelines is what we need to do, not the governor, not the president, the CDC guidelines. So I'm glad that you guys are tuned in today. It's a great group, and thanks for all your hard work.
Okay, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. Yeah, and again, just any other thoughts you have, just email the commission. We'll all get that, and then we can either take them into consideration with our decision-making process, or if they're requests or information you need, we can try to get that back for you as well. Mr. Feldman, did you want to chime in on that one issue?
No, I think you summarized it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Larry, did we have any other callers?
No, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Mr. Feldman, while I got you, I'm going to just make a request so I don't have to call you afterwards. Now that some parks have opened back up, can you work with our park staff and the county park staff to develop a list of what trails are open that are available for people to like get out in nature and walk?
Yes, sir. I know it's already posted on our site, but we'll try to work with.
Okay. Yeah, I just like to have something I can share. I'm being in questions. I'd like to just have something simple I can share out with people, and they would appreciate very much too. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's attention, and we will see each other again on Tuesday, correct? Next Tuesday. Okay. Seeing no further business before the board, we are adjourned. Everybody have a good afternoon.